Picture this, March 18th, 1314. On a tiny island in the middle of the river Seine in Paris, a fire is crackling to life. A crowd is gathering, morbidly curious, to watch two men being tied to stakes. One of them is a man around 70 years old, his body battered by years of torment. He is Jacques de Molay, the last Grand Master of the Knights Templar. As the flames start to climb, his voice cuts through the air. It's not a scream of pain, but a powerful, defiant roar that history would twist into a legend. From the fire, a voice issues a summons, a final, desperate cry for justice that would be remembered as a terrifying curse. The legend, which grew over time, claims he cried out, "Pope Clement, King Philip, within a year and a day I summon you to the judgment of God." It was a dying man's plea, but what happened next was nothing short of chilling. Within a month, Pope Clement was dead, consumed by a vicious illness. About 8 months later, King Philip followed, struck down by a stroke during a hunt. Just a coincidence, or was this the deadly fulfillment of the last Grand Master's final prayer? Today, we're investigating the chilling legend that his words weren't a prayer, but a deadly curse that brought down a king, a pope, and an entire royal dynasty. So how did we get here, a holy warrior burning at the stake? To understand that, you have to understand who the Knights Templar were. For nearly 2 centuries, they were one of the most powerful and respected institutions in all of Christendom. Founded after the First Crusade to protect pilgrims in the Holy Land, the Order of the Poor Knights of Christ and the Temple of Solomon became something much, much bigger. They were warrior monks, a blend of battlefield savagery and quiet devotion. But they were also brilliant innovators. They established a sophisticated financial network, one of the first of its kind. A pilgrim could deposit money at a Templar house in London and get a letter of credit to withdraw it in Jerusalem, making travel safer and trade easier. This made them indispensable to kings, popes, and nobles across Europe. Their wealth became the stuff of legend. Their fortresses dotted the map from England to the Middle East, and their power was immense. They answered to no king, no bishop, only to the Pope himself. At their head, elected around 1292 or 1293, was Grand Master Jacques de Molay, a veteran of the Crusades and leader of this powerful, globe-spanning force. The Templars weren't just an army, they were a state within a state, and their incredible power was about to paint a target on their backs. Across the Channel in France sat a king who saw the Templars not as protectors of the faith, but as a problem and an opportunity. He was King Philip IV of France, called Philip the Fair. And let's be honest, that's a nickname you get for your looks, not your personality. Philip was a cold, calculating, and deeply pious ruler, obsessed with his own power. His reign was filled with expensive wars, and his treasury was always running on empty. He'd already debased his own currency and in 1306 expelled France's Jewish population, seizing their assets. And he owed money to the Knights Templar. The Templar order in Paris effectively served as the royal treasury for France, and while we don't know the exact amount, it was likely significant. Philip saw their vast wealth, their tax-exempt lands, and their independence as a direct threat to his authority. A king who believed his power came straight from God wasn't about to tolerate an organization in his own backyard that answered to someone else. Meanwhile, Pope Clement V, a Frenchman, was heavily under Philip's thumb. In 1309, he had even settled the papal court in Avignon, beginning a period that would be known as the Avignon Papacy. The stage was set for one of the most ruthless power grabs in medieval history. Philip didn't just want to control the Templars, he wanted to erase them and take everything they had. The end came with shocking brutality. In the early morning hours of Friday, October 13, 1307, Philip's men moved. In a coordinated raid across France, Jacques de Molay and hundreds of Templars were arrested. That date, Friday the 13th, would go down in history as a synonym for bad luck. For the Templars, it was the beginning of the end. The charges were designed for maximum shock value: heresy, spitting on the cross, worshipping a demonic idol named Baphomet, and institutional sodomy. This was brutal propaganda, engineered to instantly shred the reputation of Christendom's revered warriors. What followed was a horrific, years-long process of imprisonment and torture. Working with royal officials, the church's inquisitors used terrible methods to force confessions. Knights who had stared down armies were broken on the rack. Under this unimaginable suffering, many Templars, including Jacques de Molay himself, confessed to the fabricated charges. These confessions were a major victory for King Philip. He now had the proof he needed. Pope Clement, despite some early hesitation, eventually buckled under Philip's pressure, ordering the arrest of Templars across Europe and formally dissolving the order in 1312. The heroes of Christendom had been branded heretics. After 7 years of captivity, the final act played out on that island in the Seine. On March 18, 1314, Jacques de Molay and another Templar leader, Geoffroy de Charny, were brought out to hear their sentence. Based on their forced confessions, a council of cardinals had sentenced them to life in prison. But something in de Molay had snapped. After years of torture and humiliation, he was done with the lies. In an astonishing display of courage, he stood before the crowd and recanted his confession. He proclaimed his own innocence and that of the Templar order. He knew exactly what this meant. To retract a confession of heresy was to be declared a relapsed heretic, and the punishment was immediate death. King Philip was enraged. He ordered them burned at the stake that very evening. It was on that pyre that de Molay spoke his final words. And this is where history and legend begin to blur. The earliest accounts, like that of the chronicler Geoffrey of Paris, say that de Molay proclaimed that God would avenge their unjust deaths. It was a plea for divine justice from a man convinced he was a martyr. Over time, however, storytellers embellished this appeal into a far more specific and dramatic curse. The legend crystallized into the version we know today, a precise summons for both the Pope and the King to appear before God's court within a year and a day to answer for their crimes. It was this version of the story, the curse, that would echo for centuries. Prayer or curse, what happened next was undeniable and shocked Europe. The prophecy was fulfilled with terrifying accuracy. Just 33 days after de Molay's execution, on April 20, 1314, Pope Clement V died. He had been suffering from a prolonged illness, possibly intestinal cancer. One down. Then, about 8 months later, on November 29, 1314, King Philip the Fair was next. He suffered what was likely a stroke while on a hunting trip and died soon after. 2 down. The 2 men who condemned the Templars were dead, well within the legendary year and a day. But the story doesn't stop there. The legend also claimed Philip's bloodline would be extinguished. This seemed impossible at the time. Philip had 3 sons to carry on his dynasty. Yet, in the 14 years between 1314 and 1328, all 3 of Philip's sons reigned as king and died one after another without leaving a surviving male heir to the throne. Louis X's posthumous son, John I, lived for only 5 days. With the death of the last son, Charles IV, in 1328, the direct Capetian line, a dynasty that had ruled France for over 300 years, was gone. The crown passed through a new house, the Valois, which kicked off a succession crisis that would lead directly to the 100 Years' War with England. For many people, this was the final horrifying proof. The Grand Master's curse had been fulfilled to the letter. So, what are we supposed to make of this incredible story? Was it a supernatural curse that toppled a pope and a royal dynasty? Or is there a more down-to-earth explanation? We're left with 3 main theories. Theory 1, a divine curse. This is the legend that has captivated people for 700 years. The idea that the righteous prayer of an innocent man was heard by God, who delivered swift, terrible justice. For those who believe in a higher power and that the universe bends toward justice, this is the most satisfying explanation. Theory 2, a remarkable coincidence. This is where most historians land. They point out that Pope Clement V was already known to be seriously ill. A death from a hunting accident or a stroke wasn't unusual for a man of King Philip's age and lifestyle. The collapse of the Capetian dynasty was unlucky, but statistically possible. Crucially, chroniclers really started writing about a specific curse after the deaths had already occurred. It may not have been the curse that caused the timing of their deaths, but the timing of their deaths that created the story of the curse. Theory 3. A human conspiracy. Now this is the most tantalizing theory, but it's also pure speculation with no hard evidence. Did the Templars get their revenge? The order was officially shut down, but thousands of members across Europe simply melted back into the population. Could a small group of loyal survivors have taken it upon themselves to fulfill their master's prophecy? A fast-acting poison that mimics a stomach illness for the Pope? A carefully arranged hunting accident for the king? We have no proof, but for an organization as secretive and resourceful as the Templars, it remains a chilling what if. Where does that leave us? We have a collection of undeniable facts and one of history's most persistent legends. We know Jacques de Molay was executed proclaiming his innocence on March 18, 1314. We know the Pope and the king who condemned him were both dead within months, and we know their dynasty crumbled right after. While the earliest sources speak of a prayer for divine justice, history has chosen to remember a deadly curse. The story's true power lies in that foggy space between coincidence and supernatural intervention, between a dying man's final words and a calculated plot for revenge. It's a gripping tale of power, betrayal, and a defiant cry from the flames that may just have changed the course of European history. What do you believe? A supernatural curse, a string of chilling coincidences, or a perfectly executed revenge plot? Let me know your theory in the comments below.
You've been watching Hidden Epochs, where we uncover the hidden purposes behind the stories that shaped our world. If you want to see more myths, disasters, and mysteries with a darker, deeper side, make sure to stick around for the next episode. History doesn't just remember what happened, it remembers what someone wanted you to believe.